What's going on, guys? I hope you're doing well. I hope you're staying safe. And if you don't follow me on social media, I put out a post on Twitter just talking about how I haven't been feeling well. It has to do with my heart condition. Long story short, I was going to just try to avoid all this stuff and just kind of rest and relax. But it was kind of a catch-22 where my mind just kept racing and I was getting really anxious because all of this stuff has been happening, and then putting it off was making it hard to relax. So I just made the decision that I want to make a video, and so here we are. And so if you want to watch the video, you can check out my my Twitter. But we're here to talk about George Floyd and Derek Chauvin, and everybody knows what happened at this point. It's absolutely crazy, and there's all the updates. I'm very far behind on all the stuff that he's been arrested and charged with. I think it was third-degree murder, and or I think there was also some manslaughter stuff, if I remember correctly. But now I want to talk about a lot of the fallout that's been happening since then, because you guys have seen all the footage where it started off as protesting, and now a lot of people are rioting and stuff, and it's things that personally I don't really agree with. And I can say, though, I understand how frustrated people are, especially with the pandemic going on. People are already frustrated. People there's so much tension involved. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I think I've been having so many episodes with my heart, which it usually happens like once a year. Like, it feels like I don't have my medication or it's not working. That's what it feels like. And it's happened multiple times in the span of a couple of months. And I just think that it's just so much tension and anxiety, and just things just need to go back to normal. So I think things have gotten so much worse because of this situation that people are just frustrated, and they're lashing out much more than they normally would have. At least that's the way that I see it. So it's kind of like, all right, even though I don't condone this stuff, it's like I am much more understandable than I've ever been. Even when it comes to things like, I've had videos of me speaking out about organizations that just get taken advantage of, like Black Lives Matter, where you have a message and you have a good one at that, and then people, like bad actors, kind of take over. They collect money, start selling merch, and then the money doesn't go to the communities that are being victimized, and so people just get exploited. And I hate that shit. But I'm just like, I don't need to speak on that or anything like that, because I understand a lot of people are frustrated, and a lot of people just want answers, and a lot of people want things done. Now, I've spoken out, and I've had solutions, and I think a lot of people have good ideas, and I'm going to get to that in a moment. But one thing I want to do is kind of just take a step back and talk about the origins of me speaking out against excessive force and police brutality. So I thought I had older posts than this, but this is one of the oldest ones that I've seen, where this was the catalyst, this case of this man named Kelly Thomas. Now, I'm going to just read this real quick, because this was from January of 2014, where it says, one of my favorite websites, and the website I used to go on was called Cop Block. I don't know if it's active anymore. It might be, but it's irrelevant. So it seems very appropriate to share this, since everyone's heated about the Kelly Thomas verdict. The case wouldn't have even made it this far if it wasn't for vigilant people recording these scumbag pigs. Follow the Facebook page, blah, blah, blah. And what I'm talking about, if you guys don't remember Kelly Thomas, it was this dude right here. It was this homeless white dude. He got beaten to death by these cops. He died in the hospital. And very reminiscent of things that you guys seen before, I Can't Breathe. And there's this horrible pictures of him in the hospital. There's footage, which was, this was in, I think, 2011 or 2010. It was around that time. So cell phone footage was starting to become, smartphones were starting to become a thing. So there was like a lot of people capturing this stuff. And you can just hear him crying out for his dad. It was heartbreaking. So this here was kind of the catalyst. And my whole thing was, it was just cops in general. Like, I didn't care about the skin color of this person. And, this person is talking about the race bait needs to stop. But that's not my whole point about this. It's just like talking about that was like the origin. And some of this stuff hits pretty close to home to me. And for a lot of you that have been following me for a long time, you might remember this video that I made in 2016, and it's called Let's Talk About Police Brutality in America. And this video, I just break down a lot of problems that are happening because so much stuff was going on around this time. There was, you know, we had cases of things, and Black Lives Matter was really at its height. And then you had people rioting and just burning things down, not helping anybody out, unfortunately. And then you had something that I'll talk about later. You had just cops being killed in retaliation. It was just getting really messed up. And in this video, I kind of explain about how I even thought about getting involved and becoming a police officer in Maricopa County in Arizona. And I ultimately didn't make the decision because when I talked to people in the community, and they said that you're not going to do well because you are wanting to help the community out, and there's too many bad actors, there's too many bad cops that are, you know, you're gonna get screwed over, because if you see some really messed up stuff going down and you try to narc and say this isn't right, like you're gonna get fired. There was actually a female cop that happened to.
Former Buffalo police officer Cariel Horn in a battle tonight to get her pension. She was fired for trying to stop a fellow officer she says was abusing a suspect.
Gregory Kwiatkowski turned Neil Mack around and started choking him. So then I'm like, Greg, you're choking him, because I thought whatever happened in the house he was still upset about. So when he didn't stop choking him, then I just grabbed his arm from around Neil Mack's neck.
If that chokehold of a handcuffed suspect caught Horn off guard, it didn't prepare her for what she says Kwiatkowski did next.
He comes up and punches me in the face, and so I had to have my bridge replaced.
Following that incident, Horn was fired, charged with obstruction for jumping on Officer Kwiatkowski's back and or striking him with her hands.
A few moments later.
Officer Kwiatkowski retired from the police force after he was suspended for choking another officer on the job, a separate incident of punching another officer when he was off the clock, and most recently, Kwiatkowski and 2 other officers were indicted on civil rights charges for holding down a black teenager and shooting him with a BB gun.
I'm kind of in the digression, but it's something that happened, and it was something I made the conscious decision not to get involved in. So yeah, this is something, just to like not get it twisted, this is something that actually is really important to me, and it really does weigh heavy on me to see this type of stuff happen. It seems like we're kind of it's cyclical. We've been already talking about, I've made jokes in other videos and podcasts talking about we're in 2016 2.0. We're seeing so many things happen again with drama on YouTube, and with the type of stuff and tactics that are happening and within politics and the race to the presidency. You're seeing so many things that are mirroring things that happened in 2016, and the same thing is happening even when it comes to this stuff, and it's just kind of crazy. And to be honest, I'm worried about how things might go moving forward, because when I see posts like this where it says the autopsy revealed no physical findings that support a diagnosis of traumatic asphyxia or strangulation, Mr. Floyd had underlying health conditions including coronary artery disease and hypertensive heart disease. The combined effects of Mr. Floyd being restrained by the police, his underlying health conditions, and any potential intoxicants in his system likely contributed to his death. When you hear stuff like this, and you saw what happened in the video, it just seems like, man, if this dude doesn't get convicted, if he's let off, if he's acquitted, you already see what's happening now. This can just blow up to a whole nother level, which is just, you hate to just see stuff like this. You really do. Another thing I'm worried about is people exacerbating the riots, because there's a lot of people that are saying stuff like peaceful protests don't work. You know, like people are tired of trying to peaceful protest because it's not doing anything. And I think that's silly, but I understand what some people might think why it's not doing anything, because people aren't taking real steps, because, you know, just kind of coming out in the streets and raising awareness is only the first step. But there's most people, 99.9% of people, stop there and nothing happens, and that's why they think peaceful protests don't work. So then they think things like riot is the next things. Like you see things like KSI, huge audience, saying stuff like peaceful protests do fuck all. If you want to make them listen, have a non-peaceful protest, non-peaceful riot, because now you have everyone's attention. Plus they're forced to take action and make a change now. Are they forced to take action and make a change when riots happen? I'm sure, KSI, you're aware of the LA riots because of Rodney King. Do you know what happened during those riots? A bunch of stuff burned down. A lot of people that I was a little kid, and all of a sudden I'm going to my grandpa's house and this dude has a shotgun ready and willing to just blast anybody because people were looting everything. And what happened to the cops that were involved? They were taken care of. Did it change everything? Or are we fast forward decades later and we're in situations like this? So no, that doesn't actually fucking change things. Not in this country. That ain't gonna happen. And I'm sure y'all have seen all the messed up stuff happening where there's people that were peacefully protesting and then people that are trying to be aggressive and people that are trying to listen to people like KSI are messing things up, and then the cops are getting involved and they're being kind of trashed too, just beating a bunch of people. Like, you see stuff like this, man. This is so unfortunate. It's so unfortunate to see stuff like this. Like, you don't want to see stuff like this. Cops kind of acting a fool too, shooting reporters. Like, why? Why? You also have some nice footage like this of a reporter getting arrested.
Okay.
You know, he's doing his
Do you mind
job.
telling me why I'm under arrest, sir? Why am I under arrest, sir?
Yeah, just lovely. People destroying CNN headquarters. Yeah, it's this is gonna get your voice heard. This is gonna make for some change. This is the change that KSI and people like him were talking about, right? And you guys have seen all the businesses that have been looted. You've seen all of that stuff. I don't need to show all this stuff. It's just really unfortunate you've seen buildings burning. That's been really messed up, man, because there are people like you and I that work in those places and those establishments, and now they have no job to go to. And that's because you want justice for this. I'm like, you're trying to avenge somebody, you know, who wrongfully died, who shouldn't have died, and you're hurting other people because of it. And that's why these things are so unfortunate, and they're just really, it's just such a horrible way to go about things. Now, one of the things that bothered me the most about all of this was seeing Martin Luther King Jr.'s son take what Martin Luther King Jr. said out of context. Right here you can see this tweet. It says, "As my father explained during his lifetime, a riot is the language of the unheard." And yes, this is something that he said. He said this, but he's acting like this is something that he was advocating for. And being his son, you know that's not what he wants. You know his legacy and what Martin Luther King Jr. has advocated for. So to use this as justification for the riots is so egregious. It really is to me. I mean, you even look on the bottom, somebody's kind of like replying with one of his other quotes. And what I want to do was actually use something that I put in a video. This was in February of 2017, where it was about a video about this guy named Minnesota Boy just being incredibly racist. And I started the video off with this, and I thought it was actually probably good to hear.
There's a book called Strength to Love written by Martin Luther King Jr. that was published in 1963. It has changed the lives and influenced many people around the world, and I would recommend anyone to read it regardless of your color or creed, but I would especially recommend Black Americans to read this. A quote that many people have probably seen before has come from this book, which says, "Returning hate for hate multiplies hate, adding deeper darkness to a night already devoid of stars. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that.
Yep.
Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that."
Yep. That's what MLK is about. That's what he is about. He's not about rioting. He's just saying that's what rioting has led to. He's not saying you should riot because of that. And I wanted to drive that home with something that I was really impressed with Philip DeFranco. You know, I've talked some trash about him in the past because of the DeFranco elite thing, but I don't really care about that anymore. I don't know what's going on with that. But he talked about this, and I'm so glad that he brought this up.
You know, what are your thoughts on the label of protesters versus rioters? And when you see looting, destruction, buildings on fire, do you think that essentially changes the narrative of what's happening here, that it distracts from the point? Or regarding moments like this, do you fall back on the words of Martin Luther King Jr.?
Check this out.
That a riot is the language of the unheard.
But also, if I can interject there, because I know a lot of people kind of fall back on this quote, MLK did say this, but I think it was an explanation for why people were seeing what they were seeing and not a justification or an encouragement of. Because about 50 seconds later, he says this.
I would hope that we can avoid riots because riots are self-defeating and socially destructive.
All right, so I'd love to know your thoughts there.
Right there. That is so, like, I'm so thankful that Philip DeFranco put this out, because there's so many people that don't know about this. There's so many people that are taking MLK out of context, and it's so sad to see his own son do this. His own son knows his legacy. And look, I understand that you may not agree with your father. You may want to pave your own path, but don't take what you know your father is not about. He's not about rioting, and then use this as the justification for rioting. It's one thing to understand it, and it's another thing to condone it. So I understand it. Martin Luther King Jr. understood it. A lot of people understand why people are angry and frustrated and they don't know what to do, so then they lash out and do crazy stuff. You have other organizations like Antifa and other people that are using this as justification to be as shitty as they always are. You have other people that are using this as a justification to loot, just steal stuff from stores. Like they don't even care about George Floyd. They're just like, oh cool, people are looting this. It's my turn to get free stuff. I already mentioned the cycle that's been happening, where things that are happening now in 2020 are things that happened in 2016, and things that are probably going to repeat if we don't get a hold of things. And we're getting really close to something that I'm sure a lot of you kind of forgot about, is if you remember the Dallas shooter. If you remember that dude that just shot, like, I think it was like 12 or 15 people and killed like 5 cops, and he was very inspired by, you know, a lot of the stuff that people are advocating for. They're like, we need to use violence and stuff like that, and we need to riot and get our voices heard. And people like this were thinking, like, this is exactly how we do that.
Somebody's really armed to the teeth. This is not one person.
But it was one shooter, Micah Xavier Johnson.
Mr. Johnson had written manifestos on how to shoot and move.
You see him in this video advancing with deadly efficiency on this officer, firing. The officer gunned down. The toll, 14 shot, 12 of them officers. 5 of the officers died.
That's where we got to all them years ago. And we're getting dangerously close to that happening again. And I would hope that we don't get to that point again. And so I say to the people that are advocating for this stuff, the celebrities that are advocating for this stuff, they need to kind of chill out, man. And the people that do have resources and that do have a voice, maybe they should take that extra step and do something. Like, you know, there's a lot of people that say, like, say I saw LeBron James, he posted, this is why we kneel, showing Colin Kaepernick. And I'm just like, I criticize that because I'm like, all right, so you got a lot of people to talk about it, I guess. Now what? Where I say, go the next step. Try to go to the city council meetings, try to organize and get things actually changing. Vote out these bad actors, you know, get people that are actually going to stand for, you know, the real stuff that's really going to protect and serve people. I say things like that, go the extra mile. I mean, and this is something, I pulled this up because as much as I don't like these people, Anita Sarkeesian and Zoe Quinn, for their crusade of their ideals, they made it to the UN.
Zoe, perhaps.
They're in the UN.
Which people
like
exist, and that
these people that technically I would say have no business being there, but they felt righteous enough, or at least enough to where they wanted to do something. And it's like, I don't see that shit happening when this stuff happens. I'm not talking about the UN particularly. I'm just saying a body of governance, like they actually went out and did something. They're actually trying, whether it's, you know, like say, like I said, I don't like those people, but I got to respect that a little bit, because that is so much more than I see a lot of these multi-millionaire celebrities doing. I can give props to Kim Kardashian for using her influence for doing stuff like that as well. That's what I'm talking about. And this last thing I want to end off with is exactly what Killer Mike is doing. This right here is an 8-minute video. It's important to watch the entire thing, but I just want to play like the first minute or so.
I didn't want to come, and I don't want to be here. I'm the son of an Atlanta City police officer. My cousin is an Atlanta City police officer, and my other cousin, East Point police officer. And I got a lot of love and respect for police officers, down to the original 8 police officers in Atlanta that even after becoming police had to dress in a YMCA because white officers didn't want to get dressed with niggers.
It's crazy.
And here we are 80 years later. I watched a white officer assassinate a black man. And I know that tore your heart out. And I know it's crippling. And I have nothing positive to say in this moment.
It's so hard to watch him in such like emotion, such raw emotion, seeing like a dude like him. He's a very strong and just huge figure, and seeing him break down like that is very hard to watch.
Because I don't want to be here. But I'm responsible to be here because it wasn't just Dr. King and people dressed nicely who marched and protested to progress this city and so many other cities. It was people like my grandmother, people like my aunts and uncles who were members of SCLC and NAACP, and in particular, Reverend James Orange, Mrs. Alice Johnson, and Reverend Love, who we just lost last year. So I'm duty bound to be here to simply say that it is your duty not to burn your own house down for anger with an enemy.
Yes.
It is your duty to fortify your own house so that you may be a house of refuge in times of organization. And now is the time to plot, plan, strategize, organize, and mobilize. It is time to beat up prosecutors you don't like at the voting booth.
You hear that right there? Beat up prosecutors you don't like at the voting booth. So important. People not mobilizing and doing things that particularly count. Where, say, when you have people that speak out, they have a nice little tweet, they have a nice little Instagram post, and then it stays right there. You have somebody like Killer Mike who has a lot of influence and he uses it. He really, really uses it. I would highly recommend you listen to him on Joe Rogan's podcast, JRE, and just soak up a lot of the knowledge and find out the type of stuff that he's been involved in. And you can really just highly respect that type of stuff. And that's pretty much where I'm at when I see stuff like this, where rioting is self-defeating, just like MLK says, just like he says, stay home, don't burn down your homes. These are your backyards. It's only going to hurt you guys. Don't do that. And if you really want things to change, think about what you can really do to take the necessary steps to change your community. You know, burning shit is not going to work. The people that are in power right now are not interested in things changing. So you just burning shit is not going to change their minds. You're burning things that have nothing to do with them. And they're just going to be like, okay, we'll see y'all again in another 4 years. I mean, no. Get them out of power. So to the KSIs, to the Colin Kaepernicks, to the LeBron Jameses, when it's time for the voting and everything, get these people out here mobilized. Walk with them. Tell everybody, we're going to go to these precincts. We're going to go to the places that we need to vote. We're all going to march together and get this done. Do it. And that's all I got to say about this, man. Rest in peace, George Floyd. That was so unnecessary, man. Hopefully justice is served and hopefully things can go back to normal and we can start like just, I don't know, loving and respecting each other, man. Y'all take care.